So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at a small mountain near the monastery, and thought to record a short awada for the internet. So that could start with just a little meditation, so we can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath, can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And can relax any patterns of tightness around the cheeks, around the chin. And can just pose the question in the mind, what would be a really comfortable way to breathe right now? And then one can just let one's body respond on its own. And if the mind wanders off, can just bring it back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond. In every dimension, may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short Ovada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So hope that everybody's having a great day, wherever it might be, and have come back here to the monastery after a nice trip out. And it's nice to be back in the forests and hills. This area of Sri Lanka is quite forested and hilly. And so the Buddha laid down suttas, which give a kind of balance between staying in one place and traveling. It's kind of, there's dangers both to staying in one place, and there's also dangers to traveling too much. If a person stays in one place all the time, then one of the dangers of this is that they accumulate many possessions, not a person, a monk, and they take on many roles and responsibilities in the monastery. It's kind of interesting because as a layperson, I remember when I was a layperson, roles and responsibilities were something that you really wanted to have. You wanted to be the CEO, you wanted to be the top doctor, you wanted to be the top scientist, or whatever it might be, some prestigious role, some prestigious responsibility. And the benefit of these roles and responsibilities, I mean, oftentimes they're high paying, but the real benefit, especially in countries like, say, like Canada or other countries which have a very strong social safety net, is that a lot of people praise and look up to people who have these roles and responsibilities. They get a lot of kind of praise. People are a little bit more deferent to them. If somebody finds out that one is a doctor, then automatically they become a little more deferent sometimes, a little more interested in what that person has to say. Somebody finds out one is a CEO, the same thing. If somebody finds out one is a top scientist or a professor at a university, it's the same thing. So this kind of praise is what the Buddha labels as kind of gains, offerings, and fame. This kind of gains, offerings, and fame is basically what one wants as a layperson, or one wants generally in the lay life. This is what's seen as success. If one has gains, if one has not so much offerings but makes money, and if one has fame, it's kind of, this is what matters. One's kind of legacy. If one becomes like a historical figure, where one's fame extends not just from that time when one was alive, but extends far beyond that, then this is seen to be wildly successful, something amazingly successful. But for Buddhist monks, the Buddha kind of turns them away from this. He recommends against these things that are praised by the world, that are loved by the world. He recommends avoiding gains, offerings, and fame. There's an entire chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya where the Buddha goes through and lists the dangers of gains, offerings, and fame. And he says, if If somebody had like an only daughter who went forth as a bhikkhuni, then you said you should, if they really wanted their welfare, they should say, we wish you to be like a Kema and Upalavana. Or if they had an only son, say, as far as I remember in the sutta, and they went forth, said they should wish that he should be like Sariputta and Mahamoggallana. And also they should wish that so long as that person hasn't become an arahant, then may gains, offerings, and fame not come to them. May they not become famous. May they not attract many, many followers and go at the head of a crowd. One of the really interesting things in that Samyutta is he says gains, offerings, and fame are an obstacle even for an arahant. Even somebody who becomes an arahant has gains, offerings, and fame as an obstacle for them. And so then Venerable Ananda, I think it was, asked the Buddha, how could there be an obstacle such as this for an arahant? And the Buddha says, it's not an obstacle to his unshakable peace of mind, but it's an obstacle to his attainment of those states that are peaceful and sublime, these kind of things. In other words, it's an obstacle towards his attainment of the jhanas. So the Buddha has one turn away from gains, offerings, and fame, from the things that the world loves, from the things that the world praises. And what this means is that one eschews, one tends to try to avoid taking on too many roles and responsibilities. It's actually not seen as a good thing for monks to do if they want to strive. So I remember reading this story about a Korean monk one time, and in this book, this was before I became a monk, it was called The Zen Monastic Experience. And it went through and described how actually a lot of monks try to avoid becoming abbots. I think that's what everybody would want to become. And there was one monk who went to such an extreme, they wanted to nominate him as the head. He was a very famous and well-known monk of this large monastery. And he, when they nominated him, he left, I think, I can't remember the exact details of the story, but it was like he kept going on like longer and longer trips, sometimes even left the country whenever the topic came up. And then finally they stopped bringing the topic up and just let him be alone. So what this means is that in Western culture, in the culture that one may have been raised in, may have been looking for, there's basically a scarcity of resources. There's a scarcity of gains. There's a scarcity of offerings. There's a scarcity of fame. And people have to fight to get the most of this. And the person who can fight the best, who can defeat the competition the most, this is the person who deserves the most gains, offerings, and fame. But what it means is that other people can't have it. There's only one spot for the CEO, one spot for the top doctor, say. Only one spot for the very top scientist. It's kind of not everybody can do that. But the Buddha has a teaching that no matter how many monks attain Nibbana, the Nibbana element is not depleted by that. In other words, Nibbana is something available for everybody. It doesn't have to be the most famous monk. It doesn't have to be the biggest personality with the most followers, with the most offerings, the most gains. It doesn't have to be somebody like that. Anybody who sincerely puts forth effort and strives searches for seclusion. They search to go alone, away from the crowd, to seclude themselves so that they can put forth effort to train their own mind. So what the Buddha points us back at is a treasure that doesn't depend on gains, doesn't depend on offerings, doesn't depend on fame. And so he points us to a treasure that one tries to gain by not taking on too many roles and responsibilities. One has to take them on, one takes them on basically out of compassion, out of a desire to help. And kind of too many of them are an obstacle to one's path, a thorn to one's path. And what this means is that there's a kind of great freedom in the Buddha's teachings. Anybody who strives can achieve it. Anybody who practices well can achieve it. One doesn't have to look around in one's meditation retreat or one's monastery or one's meditation class or wherever it is that one is practicing, whatever group of people one is practicing with. One doesn't have to look around and think, there's only one spot for this. Only one person can do it. And if the top guy can't do it, nobody else can do it. It's not the way that it works in the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha has a phrase in the Dhammapada. He says, only for his ruin, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm very bad at memorizing lines exactly. So only for his ruin does gain come to a fool. It ravages his bright fortune and rips his head apart. He says, therefore, a wise one, a disciple to the awakened one, Knowing this should put aside gains, offerings, and fame and cultivate seclusion instead. And this is something that anybody can do, so long as they have food, medicine, shelter, and clothing. They have everything they need to strive for Nibbana, regardless of whether they're the most famous, the most popular, or the most liked. In fact, these things are an obstacle. They're a thorn in one's quest to attain Nibbana.